Good afternoon. Welcome back to Passion World Talk Radio Network, a wholly owned subsidiary of Global Media Network LLC. Educate, enlighten, entertain, mindfulness. And on today's episode of Scam DamNation, I want to tell you that anyone can fall for a scam. Yes, even you. Here are the psychological tactics scammers use to steal your money. Story was written by Caitlin Really. She wrote it 5 months ago, but it's still pretty prevalent today, considering they just solved the one for the grandparents scam that 400 people were involved in over $5 million from people who can't afford to lose money. So listen up. You get a message from your bank. Your account has been compromised, or so it claims. Call this number and they'll sort it out for you, as long as you provide them with your checking account information. Well, they should have it. It's your bank. So why are they asking for it? Or maybe you're at work. When you get an email from a spouse asking for a confirmation code just sent to your phone, you're busy, you don't check it, and you go take a look at the text, and then you send them a code that you think your spouse received. Except it wasn't your bank on the phone or your spouse sending you that email. Instead, it was a scammer. And thanks to the information you just provided so willingly, they now have access to your bank account, credit cards, social security number, and so much more. In 2024, the Federal Trade Commission received $2.6 million fraud reports, resulting in $12.5 billion in losses, a significant increase from $2.5 billion lost in 2023. A 2020 AARP study found that an estimated 9 in 10 Americans have been targeted by fraud attempts in the past year, with 1 in 7 losing money. That number may even go higher, given that people often do not report being scammed due to embarrassment. And with the fraudulent text messages on the rise, more and more people are at risk of becoming potential victims. And you think it might never happen to you, but experts warn that anyone can be fooled if the circumstances are right. What's more, scammers are often preying on human behavior to catch their targets off guard. Here are the tricks they're using and how to protect yourself. Scams catch you when you're most vulnerable. Imagine this. It's the end of the workday, you're tired, and you get an email from your boss asking for an important document. So you send it over. Only your bank confirms, and then your bank calls for you to confirm a payment while you're distracted. So you do it. Perhaps you get a text about a toll charge, and since you did recently drive on a toll road, you supply your credit card info to pay it off without even thinking twice about it. These are the sorts of scams that Thomas Holt, a professor at Michigan State University School of Criminal Justice, tells Yahoo Life it happens often. Usually, he says, quote, there's something that's just a little bit off in those messages. However, you're not paying attention close enough, and it can still slip through. You may assume, ask you, me, that you'll always spot a scam, as you've lightly ignored plenty of them when you're feeling sharp. But when you're exhausted, overwhelmed, or just off your game, your cognitive abilities are diminished, which research says makes you more likely to fall for a scam. Research says that the elderly and people living with disabilities are also more likely to be victim of scams, and lower cognitive function is one reason why. With email and text scams, fraudsters don't need to know that you're vulnerable. They just send out messages and wait for the right moment to strike, says Holt. This is known in the malware space as spray and pray, where you try to scam as many people as possible and see who responds positively. Even if it's 1% of 1,000 people or 100,000 people, they respond to a fraudulent text. That's still a pretty good rate of return if you're talking about making a few $1,000s per person, Holt says. And we have a tendency to believe what people tell us. The reality is that we often believe what people tell us. Christopher Chabris, cognitive scientist and co-author of Nobody's Fool, Why We Get Taken In and What We Can Do About It, alongside Daniel Simmons, Tao's Yahoo Life. It's called Truth Bias, which is an inherent bias to believe that what people are telling us is true. Chabris says that our brains are primed to believe something is true before we even consider it to be false. We have this bias because most of the time people are telling us the truth, and it wouldn't be efficient as a species if we all went around thinking others were lying about everything. But scammers rely on this bias, Chabris says, because if the initial claims that scammers make when we first encountered them weren't believed in some sense for at least a moment, they wouldn't work. Simply put, we have to do more mental work to believe a scam is false than to take it at face value, which is when cognitive impairment comes back into play. If we are any way cognitively impaired, we may accept something as true initially and then not get around to disbelieving it or thinking about it carefully or even checking it. Scammers use authority and clout to sway us. Sometimes our truth bias causes us to believe that a scammer is a person of importance. Chabris points to cases he's seen of bank executives doing a scammer's bidding because they thought the request came from their CEO. How could you get to become the vice president of a bank and yet fall from this? One reason is if you believe it's really the CEO you're talking to, that closes off a lot of possibility, Chabris says. If you're convinced you're talking to your boss, you're more likely to do what they say than to push back. Jamaica Woody Cooper, a forensic and criminal psychologist, tells Yahoo Life that using the presumption of authority to convince people to go along with a scam is a classic tactic. Often, she says, scammers will impersonate or claim affiliation with trusted government agencies or financial institutions, all in order to lend an air of credibility to a scheme. And sometimes these figures are even celebrities who many people, especially superfans, who scammers often target for these cons, as already primed to trust and like. Recently, scammers posing as stars like Keanu Reeves and Brad Pitt stole thousands of dollars from unsuspecting victims who wanted to help out their favorite celebrity during their fake time of need. Scammers prey on our desire to be likable. Chabris explains that scammers usually take advantage of two natural human tendencies: the desire not to expand mental energy and the desire to be polite. So if someone on the phone claims to be a person from your bank hoping to help you handle a recent credit card problem, your brain might find it easier to just go along with it. That's because asking a lot of questions or double checking information takes extra brain power, something our minds naturally try to avoid. Plus, pushing back or questioning someone can feel socially uncomfortable, like you're being rude or suspicious. It's socially costly, says Chabris, noting that pushing back can make us feel like assholes or come off as overly overtrusting. Some people have the personality for that, and it's not as hard for them. But built into all of us It's an instinct not to offend people and to not want to take extra mental effort whenever we can avoid it. When you combine these two things together, it can feel better just to go along with something than to cross those lines. Cooper adds that a scammer can up the ante by making themselves seem distressed or trying to make that person they're scamming feel guilty and in need of connecting or correcting a perceived wrongdoing. The desire to be perceived as kind or to avoid confrontation plays a significant role, she says. Individuals may hesitate to question suspicious requests out of fear of seemingly rude or uncooperative. Scammers create a sense of urgency. If our brain needs more time to assess truth than it does falsehoods, then any scam that pushes us to make quick decisions is particularly dangerous. Creating a sense of urgency, Cooper says, is a powerful tool for scammers as their precious victims into making hasty decisions before they have time to think it through critically. This might look like a scammer telling you that your bank account will be permanently closed if you don't act now. Or they may warn that you're going to miss out on a major deal. Say, if your scammer is posing as an insurance agent trying to score you some type of fake discount. If you don't go through with an immediate transaction, this forces the victim to act impulsively. Cooper explains. Big question, how can we protect ourselves from scams? It's hard to avoid being targeted by a scam, but there are ways to reduce your chances of actually falling for it. Here's what experts recommend. Don't keep shady situations to yourselves. Chabris says that if you get the feeling that something possibly fishy is going on, you should gut check it with someone else in your life and tell them what's going on. Someone who comes into a situation fresh, Chabris says, is more likely to pick up on something off and possibly recognize it as a scam. Also, if a person on the phone is instructing you specifically not to speak to your loved ones about the situation, that is a red flag that you are being scammed. I just take, if I'm curious or suspicious, I take it over to AI and I ask them point blank, excuse me, is this a scam? And when they do, I thank them and delete. Double check where messages are coming from. If you get a suspicious message, take a close look at the email address or phone number is coming from, Holt says. If a person claims to be an agent at their bank, but they aren't using the bank's official address, it is a fraud. Have doubts that the person who called you from your bank is the real deal? Hang up and call the bank's official number, says Holt. You can also look up the number they called you from, but note that scammers can pay to have their fake numbers show up in top positions on Google and other search engines. Just because a phone number appears near the top of Google search result doesn't mean it's legitimate. It's easy for scammers to make things look real, but hard for consumers to tell the difference. Be suspicious of great offers. Cooper says to adopt a high degree of skepticism, particularly when encountering too good to be true deals or unsolicited offers. Assume a default position of distrust, assuming the worst rather than the best, especially when dealing with unknown individuals or entities. She says, if you want a cruise you never entered a drawing for, something is wrong. Beef up your security. The FTC recommends enabling two-factor authentication on your logins so that if a scammer does try to get into your account, you have an added layer of protection. And don't share your two-factor confirmation code. Holt emphasizes that anyone can be deceived by scams. It's not just seniors or those with limited tech knowledge. Being taken in by a scam doesn't mean you're gullible or uninformed, and stigmatizing those who are scammed can be harmful. It may cause people to keep their experiences to themselves, which can ultimately lead to more individuals being fooled. If a victim has recently encountered similar scams, they may be more vigilant, says Cooper. However, if they haven't, they may underestimate the risk. So thank you very much for joining us this afternoon on Scam DamNation. This program is brought to you by Conscious Research Solutions. Check us out at passionworldtalkradio.com/research made simple blog. Take a look at all the pain points, read them, understand them, and then sign up for a free consultation with us. And also by Flipping Out. How do you train your human? Basically, it's tongue-in-cheek satire showing you how to learn artificial intelligence without being afraid of it. It doesn't take over your mind. It doesn't do your thinking for you. It's a virtual assistant, like having a very smart child around all the time, giving you the information and technological know-how that you don't know anything about. Think of it in those terms. Also, if you want to hear the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, please donate to passionateworldtalkradio.com/donation. It's an all-woman owned and operated internet talk radio station. We've been on the air for 19 years, and we're planning on being on the air for 19 more years. Thank you very much for listening, and have a great rest of the week.